this panel are demographic resilience, and this one is not that well known. This is why we are grateful that our experts will explore evidence-based policy and responses of such policy to ensure demographic resilience and sustainability of European welfare system and, of course, our labour markets. Let us lend our ear to the experts, and the experts are Fabrizio Natale, European Commission Joint Research Centre, who will provide us with an introduction, Hanna Matysiak, University of Warsaw, who is also the chair of the session, and the speakers, Aleksandra Gajewska, Ministry of Family, Labour and Social Policy, Hanna Vseviov, Ministry of Social Affairs and Communications, Estonia, Andreas Edel, Population Europe, Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research, Agnieszka Chłoń-Domińczak, Warsaw School of Economics, and Karolina Andrian, Share the Care Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, time to start panel number 2 with a hot round of applause.
So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very happy I can welcome you to this session about demographic change and demographic resilience. The structure of the session is that I will do some short introduction, followed by Fabrizio Natale, who will also present you some data and slides, and then we'll have a discussion of the experts from various perspectives, researchers, policymakers, but also fertility continued to decline. And it has been declining since the Great Recession, since already 15 years, all over Europe, and actually in Poland, it has been lower. It was low already before, and remained at this low level, now even reached very low levels of 1.15. In parallel, there was another trend, also observed since decades, not a new one, which is a positive trend, an increase in life expectancy. We live longer and longer, and this is a common trend across Europe and also present in Poland. It concerns both women and men, and we also live longer and longer in better health. So this we know. These changes, they of course have consequences for the population in general. So the declining fertility and rising life expectancy, even though it is a positive trend, leads to so-called population aging. The larger and the growing proportion of the population is also older, above what we defined, maybe wrongly, and I will come back to this, above 65. So here, this first map shows an old age dependency ratio, which is defined, I put it here, it's the number of persons aged 65 plus, so this is this threshold, divided by number of persons aged 15 to 64, so those who are potentially working in the labor market or will be working soon in the labor market. And we can see, well, countries differ in terms of this old age dependency ratio, but in general, well, the map is quite light. But here is a we can see a projection for 2050. So basically in 25 years. And the map is much darker, right? Especially the southern Europe is very dark, but also Poland is very dark, which means that basically we will be much older, or rather a higher proportion of people will be 65 plus, and a lower proportion will be actually in the productive, the so-called productive age. The changes which I'm discussing, especially the declining fertility, are also leading to population decline. And here you see the projection of the European population. You can see that the population has been growing, and depending on the assumptions which are made, mainly about the migration, well, it will either stabilize or actually it will decline. And here you can see how this decline varies across countries. So actually not all countries are declining. The northern European countries are not projected to decline, but actually some countries, including Poland, are projected to decline. And this population decline and population aging have some consequences. One of them is the shrinking workforce. There will be fewer people who can potentially work, or at least this is what we tend to think, defining the elderly as those age 65 plus. Because of the higher proportion of the elderly, the strain on public finances and social security systems will increase, and also the pressure on the healthcare systems will increase. There might be some intergenerational tensions between the young people entering the labor markets and those who require care and those who require financial support, so the elderly. And of course, the population decline means also loss of global influence. And also, I never thought I will say it, but it seems it's growing on importance as well, the reduced potential of the persons who are in the military age. So, of course, governments are worried. They are worried mainly because of this declining fertility. I think the slide doesn't look the way I wanted it to look, okay, but I can read. So governments are worried and are implementing various actions actually to increase fertility. And here you can see various posters saying one is not enough, or we rabbits know how to do it, or how are you? Haven't you given birth yet? Well, so this sort of posters which you can find in various countries in I would say, dramatic attempts of the governments to increase fertility. Some try to roll back to traditional solutions with the idea that maybe if women are not working in the labor market, they will have more children. But there is growing evidence that actually, well, that doesn't work like this. Apart from the fact that I'm not sure women would actually go back home and would give up educational career and professional careers, evidence increasingly shows that actually, while in the past, indeed, working women were less likely to have a child. So these are the relative risks from models from those of you who do research and maybe know this. They show that actually working women are less likely to have a child, to give birth, but actually with time. So this is the time period. We can see that actually working women, well, they are as likely to have a child as those who do not work. And actually, we can also see that this pattern is quite common, and and actually in our region, working women are even more likely to give birth than the non-working women. Okay, so this doesn't work. Women will probably work, and we will not push them home, and only then they may have children. But what to do? I mean, how to increase fertility? So governments, well, okay, governments also tried to implement some policies. And this is the range of policies which actually has been tried and which brought some effects. Childcare, paid parental leaves, family benefits, flexible work, access to stable employment, housing policies, access to healthcare, family-friendly environment. All these policies bring some positive effects on fertility. But the truth is that these effects are usually quite small. You can see this in this graph, which shows, for instance, that public spending on parental leave measured in 1,000 USD, purchasing power parities per child, increases total fertility rate by 0.02 units of standard deviation. That may sound mysterious, but in fact, okay, this will not work the way I wanted, I think. What is this standard deviation? So the standard deviation we know, no, okay. Well, basically, so I calculated it, and I found that, for instance, in Europe, where we spend around $6,000 in purchasing power parities per child yearly, this increase, the increase from 0 to 6,000 can increase fertility by 0.05. Well, that is very little. In Nordic countries, where they spend double than the EU average, well, then their increases in spendings could increase fertility by 0.1. Not much. Then, of course, if you accumulate all these policies, you develop childcare, you invest equally much in parental leave programs, then you invest in some housing policies, and you invest in healthcare, and you invest in family benefits, then the situation improves, and there are some visible effects in fertility. But clearly, fertility is not the only solution. It will not solve the problem of the population aging. And that's why, in this session, I would like that we discuss what can we do. We face a challenge as Europe, given this population aging and population decline. Can we adapt? Is future or grim? Or actually, there are some opportunities which this population change, demographic change, is bringing. If they are, what they are, and actually what we can do to seize these opportunities. And that's what I would like that we discuss. To stimulate the discussion, I would like to show one last slide. It shows a little bit old data. This is the old age dependency ratio from 2017. So I already explained what the old age dependency ratio is. It's the population age 65 plus divided by the population. Here it's exactly 20 to 64. But as I said, the 65 is some threshold that we came up with some time ago. When the person who was 65 years old maybe was fragile and was not able to work and wasn't very active and was getting sick. Those who are age 65 now, or 65 plus, are different persons, especially in the most developed countries of Europe. And the authors who did these calculations, who made these maps, it wasn't me, it was Vegard, Skirbeck, and colleagues, they actually computed so-called health-adjusted dependency ratio, where in the nominator, they included persons who are aged above the age when one starts to get sick in the elderly life. And here you can see that actually when you define this elderly age like this, Western Europe gets much younger, right? So, for instance, in Sweden, I had these ages here, and they are unfortunately not visible, but in Sweden, this age is around 73, not 65. In Poland, around this time, 2017, it was actually 64, so actually close to the 65. In Germany or France, it was also above 70. So actually, how the way we define the elderly is a little bit misleading. But this is just to stimulate the discussion. There are also various other aspects to be discussed and considered. And I would like to invite Fabrizio to share with us various results of the simulations they are doing at the GRC at the European Commission. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. I think we start from the key messages to be sure to stay in time. I have a very packed presentation with data, but these are the key messages I want to leave you. First one is that demographic change is of concern, but it's not a disease that we need to cure in our societies. It's an overarching process which is a historical transformation of societies with an intrinsic inertia. And this we tend to forget. We say it's an issue of regions, it's an issue of nations, it's an issue of the EU. Actually, it's an issue at the global level. Korea, China, many other countries in the world are facing the same challenges. And there is no way back, probably. And this is also informing which type of measure we can take to contrast demographic challenges. Then we need to go beyond the contraposition between fertility and migration. At the Commission, we are experiencing now a flood of parliamentary questions, all pointing to this contraposition. And they are very ideologically driven, and there is no necessity just to be entrenching the entire discussion about the challenges of demography on this contraposition. And there are actually many other things we should be doing, and these are adaptation measures. And I give just a few examples in the presentation: adaptation measure in labor markets and in territorial cohesion. At the moment, the Commission is rediscussing cohesion policies, and demographic challenges can be an important part of this discussion. So let's start from the contraposition between fertility and migration. Here, I go very simply. There is a lot of literature on this, but I try to synthesize this literature in a few very simple statements. The first thing we can do with fertility is we can address the gap between intention and realization. There is still a gap that we can fill there. But about the drivers of low fertility, nobody really knows what is driving the low fertility. We don't have a demographic theory to explain what will happen after post-transition, demographic transition, and if there is a rebound from low fertility level. Nordic countries are experiencing levels which are unexplainable if you consider the advanced welfare system that they have nowadays. So we don't know even what are the measures that can boost fertility. There are different opinions, different theories on this, but we have no scientific evidence on what can work and what cannot work. And anyway, whatever we will do now has an impact on labor markets and competitiveness in 20 years from now, when the first children will go into the labor force. So there is nothing that can be done today for tomorrow. And then the migration, it's already important in contrasting demographic decline in many countries. It's essential and really useful to fill labor shortages. We heard before from IOM. But demographically, it needs to be very large to produce a demographic effect on population growth. And this is not likely to be accepted socially, and will disrupt social cohesion in many countries. And moreover, in order to contrast aging, it needs to be constantly replacing. So we get young migrants coming into the population, they age, so we need constantly new young migrants to refresh the age structure of the population in order to have an effect on aging. And then, as I was saying, it's very politically controversial. All the parliamentary questions we are getting nowadays from the conservative parties are saying, why is the Commission thinking to use migration to contrast demographic decline, and why are not we boosting fertility? And they are pointing to an issue of social-cultural and ethnic replacement. So this is, in very synthetic terms, the big debate politically, which will be influencing policies into the future. But let's now move to the data. Here I showed three elements in this graph. We have the fertility, replacement fertility level of 2.1, the levels that is necessary to keep population stable in the long terms. The bars are indicating the actual and current fertility rates in each country, and the dots are indicating a recalculation of the fertility level that needs to be maintained in order to achieve stable population, taking into account the migration level, the current migration levels in the countries. You see that in some cases the dots are below the bars, which means that the current fertility level, while taking into account migration, is already okay. There is no demographic decline. And in other countries, you see that the bars are below the dots, which means that either we lower the dots and we increase migration, so we use more migration to keep population stable, or we increase the bars. So you see here the complementary nature of fertility and migration, and there is no right or wrong decision here. Each country can decide to modulate these two leverages on population dynamics. The importance of migration in population dynamics, I think, can be simply represented by this chart, which is showing the projection by different institutions, Eurostat, UN Population Division, and IASA, of the labor force, according with the baseline scenarios incorporating the migration assumptions. And you see Eurostat as more optimistic projection assumption for migration. And then if we switch off migration in the three sets of projections, and you see the effect of switching off migration, no-migration scenarios, the decline of the labor force is much stronger, but you see from the comparison between the two, the sensitivity of the future to the migration assumption in the projection. Here it's a graph which is packed of information. It's about labor force. And the key message here is that there is a large untapped potential in labor markets, which can be used to increase the labor force. So you have labor force participation rate by education, age, and sex across times, and these are averages across member states. We see several trends. One is the labor force participation of older people is increasing, and this is the result of pension reforms. Another thing is that it is not increasing for young people. Then we see that there is a strong gap between men and women in labor force participation rates, and we see that these gaps are shrinking with education. So education has a beneficial effect in shrinking the gaps. So if we factor in all these gaps and we think of scenarios canceling these gaps, we can see an increase in labor force participation, and this is what we did in a simple projection exercise, where we have different scenarios projecting the EU labor force according to different scenarios. So we have a static scenario, current labor force participation rate, factoring education as a beneficial effect, so the decrease in labor force is not so strong as in a static scenario. Then we shrink the gap between men and women, and we have a beneficial effect. We let the old people converge to the retirement age, increasing retirement age. And finally, we have the scenarios where we combine everything and we let every country go to the level of labor force participation in Sweden. This scenario is basically cancelling the reduction in labor force in the EU due to the aging effect. So you see the potential of addressing demographic challenges through labor market measures. I don't know how much time do I have. Yeah, okay, I try to move quickly now to the territorial dimension. Here you see differences in old age dependency ratio at municipal level in 2021 from the census, and the difference in population change between 2011 and 2021. And you see some regional patterns. Regions are divergent in terms of demographic decline, and there are several factors here interacting. There are macro-regional dynamics. For example, in Italy, south-north divides. Then there are local dynamics, where you have urbanization and suburbanization processes. And on top, you have international migration. So when we speak about mobility and migration in the context of demographic decline, it's important to keep in mind that there are different levels, geographical levels, and there are different ways migration are affecting the divergence in terms of demography across EU regions. This is showing a projection by Eurostat of the old age dependency, the variation in several indicators across regions. So it's a variance across regions. It's an indicator of how much the regions are diverging, basically. And the message here is that these projections, which have embedded a convergence of fertility and migration, still produce a divergence, a territorial divergence. And this is because of demographic inertia. So even if we let all the region move towards the same level of fertility, towards the same level of migration, we will experience still for some time territorial divergence. And this is because it's stemming from the age structure that each regions has. And so there is a demographic inertia. So there is not much to be done also here in the short term because there is this demographic inertia playing a role. Here is to unpack even further the component of regional movements. So we have analyzed if young people and if people of different age groups are moving according to GDP per capita of regions of destination and origin. And here the key message is that movement across regions and people living, and this is a central element in the Letta report on the right to stay, are driven by patterns that are changing over the life course. So the economic drivers of migration are very strong in the younger generation, and they are less strong in the older generation, and they become also with the opposite sign. So when we interpret the demographic divergence in the light of economic divergence, we need to always to keep in mind these aspects of age structure and movement across the life course. I jumped this slide, and here the last slide is about urbanization and suburbanization patterns. And here we take a different perspective than the classical rural-urban dichotomy, and we represent population change based on the distance of traveling times from a municipality to the closest, largest cities. And we see that population change close to the city is positive, and when we cross the border of the commuting zone, it starts to invert the sign, and the same is happening for aging. So the aging process is less strong in the city, and it's becoming of the opposite sign when we cross the border of the commuting zone. This is to tell that demographic divergence at territorial level is also driven by this urbanization and suburbanization by age happening at a very local level. So just to conclude from my initial key messages, we can pursue adaptation measures beside mitigation and acting on fertility and migration, so classically the population components, and this can be done through investment in labor force, participation increasing and addressing the gaps, and through measures addressing territorial cohesion. And here we need to leverage on the very complex patterns of migrations, which are changing across the life course and across geographical level. And we have also to leverage on circular and return migration, because people that are leaving young, maybe they're coming at an older age, so we can make use of these patterns to address demographic decline in regions. So you will find more information in several reports that we are publishing at the GRC, and we have also an online platform, the Atlas of Demography, showing with interactive stories my main findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrizio. And now I would like to invite the voices from the panel. Well, basically addressing this, I mean, Fabrizio already addressed very nicely the question, what opportunities this change may bring. And now I would like to hear the voices from various perspectives from the two representatives of the ministries. We have the representative of the Polish Ministry of Family, Labor Market and Social Policy, and also a similar Ministry of Social Affairs and Communications from Estonia, and then the representatives of the international and national organizations, and finally more research-based, but also I would say policy-based insights from Professor Agnieszka Chłoń-Domińczak. So please, I would like to start from Aleksandra Gajewska, and then we move on. Which do you think that this demographic change brings some opportunities, or the future is grim and, well, we have to manage somehow, but nothing good will happen. And I give like 4 minutes. Yes, you can see. And 4 minutes to every panelist, and then I move on with the next one.
Ladies, gentlemen, thank you for inviting me. This very, very important for our ministry, but I think rather our government to discuss those issues. And I'm very happy that in this room with those people we can talk about it, because the demographic situation observed in many European countries may carry not only the negative consequences, but we also focus on achieving not getting that depopulated, but also opportunities to strengthen and develop areas affected by depopulation. We'd like to create the possibilities by flexible working arrangements, and we work on it in our ministry. Remote work, particularly. We want young people no longer forced to migrate to big cities for employment. We want to support them on the local basis. It also presents an opportunity to expand infrastructure. We concentrate on transportation, providing people from smaller towns and villages access to a wide range of services and fast connections to larger urban centers, so they don't have to move to stay there. Solutions like these will ease the burden on large metropolitan areas, allowing immigrants, especially educated women, to return to their hometowns. We concentrate a lot on women when we talk about the internal migration, and we think the country could develop in a sustainable way. To analyze the phenomenon of the population in small towns and villages more thoroughly, our ministry is currently implementing a project that is titled Developing Solutions to Counteract the Migration of Young People from the Depopulated Areas under the European Funds for Social Development. And I'd like to thank everyone who is involved in this process. I have a feeling that the government, we really wanted to have this connection with specialists, with experts, to invite them to create strategical documents, the acts together, and we wanted them to be on board with us. We also have the new approach to seniors. They play a very important role. They are increasingly in better health, which we really appreciate. And one of the effects of demographic changes is the promotion of their active aging. Promoting active aging requires a comprehensive approach, engaging seniors in various activities that support their physical, social, and mental well-being. So we want to reduce loneliness and social exclusion, improve the image of seniors in society, and facilitates knowledge and experience transfer through joint community activities, shared interest, and also volunteering. We aim to encourage Poles to remain professionally active as long as possible, and we address this message to those people who are going to be retired, but also those who are already retired. We are working on the programs that are addressed to them so they can stay active or consider to stay active. One of the friendly and safe ways to utilize the potential of older people is senior volunteering. We don't want to, it's not the priority, but we want to see this possibility in the offer we address to the people, and we want them to feel needed. And this is the first step, and when they feel needed, they may think about being professional active. So all of this contributes to a better quality of life for seniors who, if they wish, can remain active members of society. We want women to be independent and we want women to be active, but we want to give them the possibility. It's their choice. They can choose their way, but we need strong tools for them to make the decision, because if they are not able to make the decision, they won't be active. So in Poland, as a response to dynamic demographic, social and economic changes, related to declining fertility rates, we introduced new legal regulations. This is the Act on Supporting Parents in Professional Activity and Childcare, and we call it the Active Parent. We firstly wanted to name it Active Mom, but then we decided that we need to have both parents on board and discuss it this way. And its goal is to encourage professional activity of parents with children aged from 12 to 35 months. And they receive a benefit, 1,500 zlotys, which is 3 times higher than they received from the former government. And thanks to this solution, the modern woman, an educated and ambitious woman, does not have to give up her professional development plans and aspiration in order to become a mother, because from this benefit they can pay for the early child care education. On the other hand, we build this access. We invest from the funds from European Union to build the access to nurseries, to the child care, and we spent 6.5 billions of zlotys to get the access to nurseries. And when I came to the ministry, there was 1,105 gminas, and in these places we didn't have any services of childcare system. And I'm here for almost 16 months, and we achieved to have the services in 210 more. So we work the daily basis to increase the numbers. So we also concentrate on the high quality nursery care, because if we build the access, if we provide benefits, we also want to have a high quality of the nurseries, of the childcare. We want to invest in the system. So we are training all the people that are building the system. We started, and it's gonna be for 18 months, and we're introduced the standards starting from the 1st of January 2026. So we all have the quality, and we came with this idea from the professor Edward Melquish from Oxford University, that he showed that both the numbers of years of early education and its quality have a significant impact on children's experience and their long-term development. So language development forms the foundation of cognitive, educational, and social development. And this is what I am always concentrating on in my works in the ministry. So thus high quality nursery care contributes to better participation of children for further education, and consequently to a higher quality of adult life and better society, and it also influence the demography. So I'll start with this.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for addressing already the second question, how that can be achieved. So maybe let's do like this, that now I pass the voice to Hanna, and you can actually speak about both. So is future or green, or there are actually some opportunities, and how that can be achieved. And then we can do the last round very shortly. So.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for the invitation and for the very warm welcome. And thank you to all of you who have stayed after the lunch break and coffee break, because I think it's almost as big of a challenge as the population aging, to stay alert after the coffee break. But isn't it a bit funny that we all want to live longer, and now all of a sudden it's such a huge problem? I don't know, or I think have a small competition here, which is the more frightening crisis. Is it migration or population aging? And at the same time, as we have already heard from all the different experts who talked in the morning, that those are both processes that in a way are inevitable. And there's nothing wrong with living longer. It's actually one of the biggest achievements of humankind and human development. And the only problem is if we don't live healthy and if we don't have a meaning to our life, then it becomes a burden to ourselves and to the society. And when I received the invitation here and also the request to look at the positive side of aging, then I have to admit that at first I was, because I'm so used to talking about the problems and the challenges, and this is part of my job, because I have to sell the ideas to the political leaders. And of course, there's always a lack of resources in social policies, so I have to talk to them about the challenges that population aging brings. But it's really refreshing to talk about the positive side as well. And so I thought about it. What's positive here? So first of all, longer life expectancy means that different generations are now living and interacting over much longer periods than before. Of course, we know that because people tend to have children in their later lives, this in a way balances that as well, but and takes off some of the effect, but not in such a big way. So there are still a lot of more grandchildren that can see their grandparents or even the older generation. And this is something that we really need to cherish, I think. And of course, we know that this can bring challenges to different societies as well. But there's also a possibility for deeper connections between age groups, encouraging mutual understanding, empathy, and also knowledge sharing. And if nurtured really well, then this could lead to a wiser, more tolerant, and more cohesive society. And this is something Europe could for sure benefit from in times of social fragmentation. And second, an aging population, of course, requires new and expanded health and social care services. And while this puts pressure on public finances, it also might drive innovation. And probably some of you are aware that the welfare models that we are currently using in most of the EU countries, they were developed after the Second World War. The plan of Beveridge is quite well known, but these plans and these models were built under the assumption of high fertility rates and a large working age population. And we know that this is not the case anymore and certainly will not be the case in the further future. And this calls for a fundamental rethinking of how we fund and deliver social protection. And of course, we can say that nothing can be done and the future is terrible. But at the same time, this can also push us toward a smarter, more flexible and innovative policy solutions. And one promising area here is health and welfare technology. Maybe some of you have heard about the different silver economy possibilities. Well, at least in Estonia, as we are used to in being good at IT solutions, different innovative technologies, then we try to seize this as an opportunity for a new expert niche for Estonia to develop different health and welfare technologies, because we know that there are more and more people who could take advantage of these technologies. One might say jokingly that these countries who are the forerunners of aging might have an economic advantage in these sectors. So also a way to try to look at aging in a more positive way. So this was something that I wanted to mention concerning the first question, that I think there are different opportunities. We just have to have a more positive look at population aging. And as there's also the second question about how that can be achieved, then of course, in trying to increase fertility rate, I think we have the same issue here as well, that there's no silver bullets. There's a number of things that we need to do, and we need to do it at the same time to have a positive effect. But I will bring out some of the ideas. One of the things is that I think we must challenge the outdated ideas about retirement. It was also mentioned in the previous presentation that not everyone ages in the same way. Many people in their 70s and even 80s remain mentally sharp, motivated, and capable of contributing. Therefore, we should reimagine work in the later life. And this includes creating roles with reduced hours, lower stress, and flexible schedules, jobs that are not only feasible for older adults, but also value their strengths, because, of course, there are strengths, their experience, reliability, stability, and mentoring skills. And employers have a real opportunity here to design age-smart working places that tap into this valuable talent pool. And I think we also must recognize that for many, the retirement period is simply too long to be spent passively. And I checked this morning, with the help of AI, the pension systems in different countries and also in Poland. And I know now that there are very many European countries that in recent years have done changes or reforms into their pension systems. But I think this is also something that has been one of our key innovations, is that we have a very flexible pension system, and it was already introduced in 1996. And in Estonia, people have, for a really long time, have been able to work and receive pension at the same time without any reduction in their benefits. And this approach not only respects individual choice, but also encourages older adults to stay active in the workforce. And in fact, Estonia has one of the highest employment rates among elderly people in EU. I think we are second behind Sweden when we are talking about the age group 55 to 60 and above 65. Estonia has the highest employment rate. I have to admit that it has to do with the low pensions as well. We have to be objective here, but we know that the possibility and also the tradition now, as the system has been in place for such a long time, the possibility to work and receive pension at the same time also has had a very positive effect. And also employers are very used to elderly people working as well. And just a couple of remarks about the pension system. In some countries, I think 1/3 of the EU countries, but maybe I am wrong, the pension age is also linked to the statute to life expectancy. This is one of the reforms we made in Estonia a couple of years ago as well. And starting from 2027, this system will be in place. So the pension age will increase accordingly to life expectancy. And there's one more thing I'd like to address, because we are used to talking about these hardcore policy measures, but there's also the soft side to supporting elderly people. And it's about social fabric. So I have heard this from some experts from other European countries as well. But this is something we are trying to do in Estonia as well, to, in a way, turn back to our roots of community-based care and cooperation. With fewer children per family and increasing geographic distance between generations, traditional family support structures are under pressure, but what we often still have is physical proximity within communities, neighbors, local volunteers, and intergenerational networks, and they can be mobilized more intentionally. And to make this work, we need more than goodwill. We need also trained professionals who know how to build and coordinate these networks. And so that's also why we recently launched a master's program called Community Work in Aging Society. And the goal is to develop a new generation of specialists who can lead the creation of sustainable, locally grounded, intergenerational solutions. And by that, I don't only mean that we send kindergarten children to sing in elderly homes, because this is quite often something that is brought out as a very innovative solution, how to build intergenerational relations. This doesn't work like that. And we are talking about more meaningful, ongoing cooperation that draws on the strengths of all age groups and builds lasting social capital. And I think I have now used all my time, so I will not sum up, but these are some of the ideas that I wanted to share with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for sharing these ideas with us, and also for thinking so much before the panel about what could be the opportunities. The idea here was really that we change our thinking, and maybe in this way we come up with some more solutions or different ideas than we usually do. So now I would like to ask Andreas Edel from Population Europe to share his thoughts with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation, and also for staying here. When I read this question, is the future all grim? I was immediately inclined to say, let's start with some encouragement and enthusiastic message, then with some realistic approach, maybe a bit pessimistic approach, and then think about solutions. I think it's really beneficial to think in the generations we had behind us. So if I think about my parents, they experienced as children the Second World War, the post-war reconstruction period, the Cold War, and I was born shortly after the Cuba crisis, when actually the nuclear extinction of the world was on the agenda. So a generation which had huge challenges to face, and the total fertility rate was in Germany 2.27, and we were 5 brothers and siblings. Our generation and the next one, we have to deal, of course, with different challenges. We have to deal with climate change, we have with a new post-war, post-Cold War world order, and of course with demographic change, which poses our social systems, our healthcare and pension systems under stress. We have to deal with depopulation and shrinking labor force. But why shouldn't we be able to manage that as the generations before us? So let me be very clear, that's not the usual Generation Z or millennials bashing, which is completely nonsense, because every generation needs to solve their own challenges. And it's also not this blind optimism which you sometimes see. It's not the data-driven optimism of Steven Pinker from Harvard. I guess he sees it today perhaps a bit different. But still, there's a lot of reason for optimistic approach. On average, our population is much, much better educated than in any generation before us. If you see it in Germany, for instance, a third of every cohort gets a high school degree. In the 60s, it was only 6%. So I see the overall level of education has been raised. Of course, there's a lot of inequality, and this also refers to the accumulation of wealth. So of course, also our generation was able to accumulate more wealth over the times of their life course. So we have more resources than any previous generations before us. And you can also see that sometimes, for instance, in Germany, the taxable and inherited wealth has more than doubled in the last 10 years. So it's really growing. Still, there's inequality, which I will address a bit later. On average, you can also see that today's population is much healthier than any generation before, as you see it in the rising life expectancy. Something 68 in the 1960s, today over 80 on average in Germany, and of course also in the number of centenarians, so people also reach a higher age in that regard. And this is really important also to say it here loud and more than once again, for the first time in history, we actually have a common vision of Europe, which is based on democratic values, human rights, and the welfare states. And this holds already since 75 years, so we should really be proud of that this has been achieved. And this is a good base to start to create the future. But now let's get a bit away with the rose-colored glasses. We should not be naive and illusionistic. We have really to look into realistic scenarios. The first one is clear, that was also mentioned today. A new baby boom is extremely unlikely. Because in any generation with low fertility, also less mothers and fathers were born. And so it's really very logical. You don't need a complicated number and math to understand that this will, of course, continue for a while in that way. And we will certainly not reach a replacement level. The other thing is that not every one of us will enjoy a happy and healthy life. There's a huge life expectancy discrepancy, so disparity. It's not equally distributed over the population. We have to deal with that. So even if on my life expectancy might not convene with the average life expectancy, it's true that I have more chances to reach a longer age because I'm well educated, I have a higher socioeconomic status, and better access to healthcare. And this is not true for all and everyone. So this is something we have to work on. And we have also to think about the growing socioeconomic, socio-demographic diversity. So in all the patterns, not only ethnicity, but also age diversity. As mentioned, we have now different generations in one family. Health diversity, we have income, education, and other diversities which we have to take into regard. Our population is getting more diverse. We have to tailor that in. And, which was also mentioned by colleagues, regional disparities between urban and rural areas, which we have to deal with. And of course, with constantly low fertility and high life expectancy, our population will age and will shrink. And of course, and this was mentioned more than once today, the elephant in the room is always migration. But if you look into history, I'm a historian by training, sorry if I could get always to historical things. If you think about history, migration was actually always balanced a natural population development. This occurred in this region, I think, as well, but mainly also in Germany after the 30 World War. It happened after the plague, it happened in the industrialization period, and of course after the Second World War. We should come to the view, and this is exactly what also Hanna said today, that migration and mobility is the norm and not the exception. Think about the history of your own family, think the history of your country, how strongly migration influenced that development. But we need a balanced view so that we consider all the factors. Having children later in life, which is one reason for the low fertility, doesn't indeed not make much sense in terms of biology. But some researchers in Max Planck Institute have demonstrated that it makes sense in terms of resource. Older mothers have usually better resources due to the education they received before, which they can transfer to the next generation. And if you have fewer children, we might also invest more into early childhood education, into the school system, and so on and so on. So it comes with a pro and comes with a con. Population decline can also mean that we have more resources left to invest in the population we have. So our director in Rostock, Mikko Myrskylä, told us a story from Finland once, that the Finnish government actually, when the population decline started, thought about, okay, now let's spend less money for the children. And so the researchers saying, no, keep the level of spending so that the education grows and gets better, which is actually a nice idea. But it comes also with a price, because if you have less taxable income and fewer resources, of course, you cannot maintain all these infrastructures, which you need actually to improve the living conditions of the people. And then it's one important thing which also was touched before. Citizens experience demographic change much more at the local and at the neighborhood level, within their families and not so much at the European and national level. So it's really where people see, okay, I cannot go to a kita, there's no kita. Or I have to care for my mother or my father, but I have not the resources at hand to do that. Or I need a job and the factory closes in my neighborhood. That's where people get then frustrated. And then we come up with this feeling left aside thing, which of course then also supports anti-migratory movements and something like that. What we really need is we need more micro-studies to determine practical implications for the citizens. We must consider how families are structured. We must consider how energy and housing requirements, the ability to provide care and assistance, where society and state have to intervene, and the impact on the local community. And we need to collect more best practice. We already heard a lot of very good and best practice from the colleagues from the government, which we need also to engage more as researchers with the local stakeholders in order to learn from their experiences. They know a lot about what's going on, what's successful, what's not. But what they don't have and need is reliable projections, because very often they have a few of 5 to 10 years, and sometimes only until the next elections take place. But they need actually a few from 20, 30, 40 years. If you invest now into something, infrastructure, you should know how many people you have in 30 years when demographic change has hit you. And that's my last point. We can learn from a comparative and even global perspective. We are currently developing a project together with colleagues from the US because they have the same issue, that they have their population and that they need to find solution for that. So we should take this all serious. People have fewer children than they desire. We have to work on that. Not everyone achieves good health, which would enable them to be productive later in life. And there are regional disparities with regard to depopulation and life expectancy, which we should take into regard. Now I think do I have my time?
Well, you have 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Okay, that's a bit, okay, let me then say just the one thing. I think we need really new narratives. We actually know what we can do, how we can support families. We have a lot of tools. We can evaluate those tools. We have projections. We know these things. What we really need is new narratives. We heard today about a new narrative on migration. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. It's a normal population development, which we have in front of us. If you think about younger people, we have to need this narrative that we will support them, that we can see children as a treasure of the society, and that we will them give best support to have the number of children they desire. And we should not put pressure on them to do that. It should come from their heart, as it was in the past. A new narrative on aging, of course, that's not a pain, but it's actually something beautiful. There's a famous quote of Jonathan Swift, who said, everyone wants to come to a long old age, but no one wants to age. So the one should you not ignore. And my last point, and then I close, is we should try to benefit from the baby boomer generation, well-educated, usually accumulated wealth, willing to do something in their retirement age. And they can help NGOs and families to better survive this era we go through.
Thank you, Andreas, for this very nuanced approach, showing us pros and cons. And now I would like to invite Karolina Andrian from the Share the Care Foundation.
Hello, everybody. Maybe I will start from this challenging question. I also have a problem with it. So I don't work in a ministry. I'm from NGO, and I don't work with politicians, but still I saw only challenges at the beginning. So I was like, okay, what kind of opportunities we can see here? And as I deep into the dialogue with, I was thinking about it since 1 week when we got this question, the answers came. And first of all, I think the first opportunity is that we are sitting here together, NGOs, government representatives, academics, thinking how we can seize these opportunities, how we can also answer the challenges we have and go beyond traditional or conventional demographic solutions. And of course, it came to me accept innovation that is pushing around healthcare system, and I'm thinking also about innovation in a framework how we think about, for example, aging. That we should shift our understanding from aging society to longevity society. When we can focus not only on age, but on quality of life, embracing engagement in professional, but not only professional activity, but civic, social, and volunteer roles that was mentioned before. Also, it was mentioned by Anna about how we think about productive age, that we also think about the limit of 65 years, and also all the ratios are counted when we assume that the limit is 65 years, which is not already true, because we need to think about if this threshold includes the context of health, vitality, and contribution extended well beyond the age. So I'm not thinking about creative accounting here, but our mindset, how we approach thinking about aging. And so it's not even changing the vocabulary, but it is about changing our attitude and how we approach this issue. But there is other things that needs to be changed, how we think about it. There is a labor market, for example. We must embrace the transition from rigid, full-time, hour-based model to more flexible forms of employment to accommodate diverse needs. People who are taking care of children, adults, seniors, people with disabilities, and also caring for other people that are not biologically connected to you, because you can take care also of your neighbors, as it was mentioned here, or other individual of your community. So we also need to think, to reframe how we think about care. Care should be not viewed as only one-way, dependent relation, but rather as mutual bond rooted in empathy, connection, and shared sense of purpose that we really need. And there is a lot of young people looking and asking about sense of their life and the purpose. What else? Also, how we think about professional activity, the function of the professional activity. It's no longer just economic function, but is increasingly recognized as a means to social participation, identity formation, and interpersonal connection, and again, a sense of purpose. Why I'm here? Is my contribution to this society? And this need is valid for young generation, but also for the older generation. The notion of family, another structure that is really old-fashioned, how we think about it. We need to go much more beyond 2 + 2 + pet, but even much more beyond, for example, single-parent household or patchwork families or same-sex couples. We need to think that family can be based on emotional connection, not only biological connection. So the way we think about family needs to be reframed and needs to be modern. Another thing is our connection and relation, building not the number of relations, but the quality of interaction between human and human. When we have the population, when we have AI transition and a lot of AI tools, a contact human to human will be very important. And also it can be delivered by reframing the local ecosystems, using the resources that we already have, libraries, care facilities, but also discounts, supermarkets. We are thinking that supermarket is only for buying bread and milk. But these supermarkets and discounts are collecting a lot of information about what you are buying, who you are, because you have discount cards, what kind of children you are supporting and who you are supporting, and also they are seeing who you are coming with. So this kind of information can be also used and gathered for providing a local support and different social policies that support local communities. And finally, I think that it's important also to think about roles in families, especially when we think about women participation in labor market. Fathers need to be recognized as equal caregivers. We were mentioning the parental leaves as one of the solutions for increasing fertility. But mostly we think about parental leaves for mothers. It's very rarely that we think about fathers as equal caregivers, and also that needs to be shifted. For example, we need to think about father-inclusive environment, vocabulary that we are using. For example, parental leave in Poland, when you are a father and you are going on parental leave, you are receiving maternity allowance. It's just a detail, but still, if we think about feminitives, it's also, we can think that this is just a detail. It's not a detail. This is vocabulary that shapes our mindset and perception. So that comes also to entitlements and education. That's the opportunities that I see, but I would like to also address how we can overcome challenges. If I have a little bit time, I think I have. We are a very small NGO. We are in Share the Care Foundation. We promote partnership between women and men, and this reflects in our advocacy for equal parental leave and balanced sharing of responsibilities in professional and domestic life. And we are only 4 people in our organization. So in order to scale the impact, it is extremely important to collaborate between the sectors. So the first thing we were thinking, we went to the social insurance institution. Why? Because this is the touch point, a great touch point for parents. Social insurance institution in Poland is administrating all the leave payments and pensions. So it can build the connection between your leave payments and your pension that you will be receiving in the future. Also, this institution has contact with almost all parents, at least parents active on the labor markets. So this is a great touch point for working together. Another thing is Labor Inspectorate, National Labor Inspectorate. This year we started collaboration with this organization, a huge one. Why? Because this is a touch point for employers, for the business, needs to be educated why we are doing all this, what kind of benefits it brings if they shift the approach towards people on the labor market. And another thing, we spent 3 years, because we are only 5 years old organization, quite young, I think. 3 years we spent on doing advocacy to implement work-life balance directive in Poland, to change the way we think about fathers, parental equality, partnership, and etc. But legislation is not enough. It is very important that we think about education. For example, that education needs to be rooted in the benefits of the individual. Why I need parental leave? What is the difference between paternity leave and parental leave? What is it for? What is it for me in this? For the individual, for the family, for the child. So this education is a key, but education that is not showing only this is your right, this, and telling you the list that you can have when you become a parent. It is important that it is aligned with benefits, and all this also corresponds to business and employers, exactly the same. And the last thing, narrative, exactly the same. It needs to be tailored to specific audiences, communities, and cultural context, even within the Poland. Sometimes initiating a conversation around gender equality can be polarizing, but if we shift the narrative towards shared goals, like, for example, well-being of the children, their psychological safety, physical safety, their potential of the chances in the future, we can build more common ground. And I know it can be hard. It was very hard for us as well when we were shaping the communication strategy for the work-life balance directive for now. But if we make it modern, inclusive, we can really have a platform for dialogue and for bringing the change that we all desire. Because even if we have different agenda like economics, NGOs, politicians, business, we still have the same goal in the end. So we need to take into consideration the limits of each of sectors, opportunities as well, but taking into consideration the limits together, we can work out the approach that can be useful and can push for change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, I would like to invite Agnieszka Chłoń-Domińczak. Agnieszka is professor at the Warsaw School of Economics, but she's also the chair of the Governmental Population Council.
Yes. Thank you. And it's a challenge to speak the last because, I mean, so many things have been said already, but I hope that I can recap some of the things and add maybe some additional perspectives. I would start from the perspectives. Ania showed projections until 2050, what the old age dependency will look like in 2050. So we may say that, I mean, is it grim, is it not grim? That's one perspective. The other perspective is it will be in 25 years. How many governments we will have in 25 years? 8 or more, depending on the situation. So that means that our projections, when we showed them, and that was also the lesson I have learned at the beginning of my career, that, I mean, we show those graphs that look 25 years, 30 years, 50 years ahead, and that when we think about political cycles, we have to remember that there are many, many governments that will follow those cycles. So think about 8 governments in 25 years. This is a challenge. I think another perspective is the one given by Andreas, which is also very important, that we have to look into the past and learn from the past. Do you know what was the retirement age with Bismarckian reforms? Andreas should know, 70. So when Otto von Bismarck introduced the pension system in late 19th century, the retirement age was 70. So the question is, how come we think about 65 right now? And the answer is that Europe, after the war, enjoyed demographic dividend. And this demographic dividend was used as a pressure to lower retirement age, to enjoy the old age bliss by many. Right now, we don't have this buffer anymore, and we have to learn from that. But, so 65 is not something that is embedded, that is engraved in stone. This is something that we have to think about, not to mention 60 for women in Poland. So, I mean, 60-year-old women today are definitely not old, and we should remember that very much. Then, challenge, opportunity, and demographic change. I tend to say that demographic change is a process that is to a large extent inevitable. So whatever we'll do, populations in many countries, including Poland, will shrink. The question is how quickly or less quickly they will shrink, but they will shrink. So the question is how can we shrink smartly, and how we can change our mindset from thinking that we will grow to as in Poland, to a 40 million population, to a population that will be 30 million or less, definitely less according to projections. So that requires changing of the mindset and acknowledging the fact that we need to prepare for the change, but we will not be able to reverse it, whatever happens. But of course, we need to do everything to think how to use those changes as opportunities and how to tackle the challenges that are ahead. And we already see some signs that I think are showing that demography forces certain things. When we think about women's participation in the labor market, that is, I think, a benefit of the demographic change to a certain extent. When we have shrinking labor force, when we have less people, we start to think where are those resources that can be used after the World War or even during the World War. Women were starting to become the member, started to work, started employment because there were less men, because they were fighting or because overall there was a need. So demography really is, I would say, a factor that benefits women to realize their potential opportunities and dreams to a certain extent. There are also regional differences that were mentioned, but it is also very important to think about this kind of levels of where we can think about how we can tackle aging, how we can tackle demographic processes from different levels, starting from individuals, through the families, local environment, regional and national. And I agree that every layer matters, because every layer builds. There's a word that was very frequently used in the context of policy discussion, which is subsidiarity. But it is more than just the national versus European policy. It is about what we can do at our individual level, and where we are not able to deal at the individual level, we have to go up and up and up. So this is subsidiarity. Do whatever you can within the closest possible range. And if not, then go to the next layer. And I think it is very important when we think about resilience that we think about those layers and layers of opportunities. And I have 5 minutes. And how to look at those opportunities? And definitely, I mean, one sort of aside note I have, but I think it's very important. When we think about policies at different levels, how to improve fertility, how to look at the labor force participation, how to look at aging, how to look at the quality of life of people at different ages, we need to have life course policies, and we have individual policies as well. Amongst the family-related the fertility-related policies, one that was not mentioned in the panel, but I think it's very important, is also reproductive health, and especially assisted reproductive treatments, because we've learned recently at the Government Population Council that the in vitro program that the government introduced actually contributed more to fertility than the effect of the family benefits. So I'm not saying that we should just focus on one and not have another. We should have both. But nevertheless, assisted reproductive technologies are very important in our time when women are deciding to have children at older and older ages, and they need to have support in many instances. But overall, we need to have this kind of a life course-focused policies and subsidiarity-driven policies that include various aspects: health, productivity, including investment in human capital, starting very early. And I think what Minister Gajewska mentioned about having quality of the early childhood education and care is a very important thing, because early childhood is a foundation of further human capital development, and we need that. So we need something that is actually framed as a social investment perspective. So there is even a recommendation in an expert report on the future of the welfare state and social security in Europe that there should be this golden rule of social investment. And that was also mentioned by Andreas, that we don't have to, and then we shouldn't reduce educational spending because there's less children, but we should spend the same. That means that per capita we spend more and we invest more. So this kind of a social investment, life course perspective is also important. We need to have a policy mix that looks beyond silos. It's very difficult to discuss policies when we have the Ministry of Family, we have the Ministry of Labor, we have the Ministry for the Senior Policy, we have the Ministry of Health, we have Ministry of Education, we have Ministry of Science, we have Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Regional Development. So all of them think about things, and then the question is it cohesive what happens afterwards or not? And probably some going beyond silos is important, but I know it's very difficult to really have this kind of approach. But we need it. So we need to think on the one hand how to invest in families, how to bridge the gap between the desired and unwanted fertility. But on the other hand, how to support older people in their environment, how to support women at my age that have to face at the same time a need to care for the older parents that require support, and sometimes grandchildren that and supporting their children in bringing the grandchildren. So this kind of a sandwich generation that is always there in a different way, but it is always there. So definitely we need this kind of a life course, social investment policies, going beyond silos and looking at various aspects of both changing what we can change, but also adapting where we have to adapt so that people have a good quality of life. And the final sentence I wanted to say is that migrations are an important part of this picture, and they were there ever. And if we think about the post-war Poland, that was a lot about migration because of the changes of the borders. And I'm speaking, I'm not a migrant, but my mother was born near Vilnius and my father was born near Tarnów. So if they haven't met in Warsaw, I wouldn't be speaking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is finishing, so I think we will have to move the discussion to the coffee break. But I would like to thank all the panelists. The message I got actually from this discussion is that there are both positive and negative sides of the demographic change, right? Demographic change is not a malaise, it's a change which happens. There are some positives. We will be better educated, we will be in better health, we will have more resources to invest in the younger generation. But at the same time, not everyone will be there. Not everybody will live in a better health, not everybody will be able to get this higher education, and some people will live in these depopulated areas with little help. So I would conclude that policy makers should think about both this strata of the population, those who have resources and who benefit, and those who are kind of are getting left behind, or maybe not, to prevent them to be left behind. And maybe that way we can become resilient. Yes, and I would like to thank you all the panelists for coming and for sharing their thoughts, and I hope you can still catch them and discuss during the coffee break. Thank you.
I hope the future will not be grim. However, I'm the grim reaper of that panel. Let's once again thank with probably a more thunderous applause to all the speakers. Fabrizio Natale, Anna Matysiak, Aleksandra Gajewska, Hanna Vseviov, Andreas Edel, Agnieszka Chłoń-Domińczak, and Karolina Andrian. And ladies and gentlemen, the Blitz coffee break. Please, let's be back in 12 minutes.
Teraz na panią poproszę.